I've seen way less V for Vendetta content, given the
I know. Everybody's so young.
the 5th of
They
November
haven't
of
seen
it all
it.
happening tomorrow.
So you can't tell who falls on what side of that. So it'll look like you're saying something. We're done with that conversation, though.
Here we are, Abe Cast Iron Balls, a podcast about sports because we've got to find something else to talk about. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
Yep, here.
Lori's here on
Present.
It's November the 4th, 2024, the eve of the 2024 first playoff prediction.
There we go.
That's
first
right.
playoff bracket thing
Yep.
being released by the folks
That's
at
the important thing. That's what
Football
I'm going to be
Playoff
watching tomorrow.
7 p.m. Don't forget to tune in to ESPN.
Nothing else to watch tomorrow.
Certainly not. We decided to record Cast Iron Brains first so that we could conclude with the more lighthearted
So that I don't go to bed with fucking dread and panic.
and upbeat conversation.
We're just talking about the games that happened. We're not even talking about the games that will happen. We're talking about stuff that already happened. All is known already. It's great.
Abe, did you have a good weekend? Did you consume a lot of sports and enjoy yourself?
I consumed a lot of sports, also consumed a lot of chili. I went to a chili festival. They call it the Stomp and Chomp Festival. And
What is the
Why do they
stomping
have to
part?
call it that?
I
That's
don't know.
lame.
Maybe there's like some reason before, but like
Is it like the black people?
no, there's none of that. There was mostly like white people. There wasn't any band. There was no
Well, this
music.
is stupid.
I think there must be some origin for the term, but like now all it is, and it's a weird setup. I haven't been to another chili festival. It's a free festival. They have a bunch of different people making chili, and you have to purchase a designated spoon. They won't give you the chili with any old spoon or your hands or whatever. You have to you got to pay $10 for a spoon. So I did. And at 12:30, they sound the alarm, and they're like, have at it.
The flatware, explain it to me. Is it a metal? Is it wooden?
It's a wooden,
Flatware is plates.
It's a wooden, eco-friendly spoon.
Do they give you a cup or a bowl of chili at the different spots? Surely you're not just taking your fucking wooden spoon and like dipping into this person's pot of chili.
No, this is how you start new pandemics. Everybody goes and puts their mouth on the spoon and puts it in these shared dishes.
No, they all come in like very mini cup. It's almost like a shot of water, kind of those.
Like a sample,
small,
a sample cup.
The sample
What the fuck
cup.
do you need the spoon for then? You just kind of sort of
No.
tongue the thing.
You need a spoon. You need a spoon.
But the spoon is the price of admission. You can't just show up there and like just give me chili.
Right.
You need to pay. So like the day before I paid $10. They gave me a spoon. I kept it overnight. Showed up the next day and I got a bunch of chili.
What happens if you lose your spoon?
Like halfway through, I was like, "This is way too much chili." I did not prepare to eat so much chili.
Well, that's on you, Abe.
But the thing
you
is,
went to a chili festival.
But everyone is kind of behaving as if it's a competition. They're all like scrambling to get as much chili before they run out, and they all have these gimmicky names. It's like a disco chili. There was a.
Are you supposed to like rate and rank them as you go?
Some people, like some of the people that are like involved, they're the judges. But like for the rest of us, I wasn't rating anything.
Okay, so you're just part of the rabble there to enjoy things. You're not actually. It's not like there's not a democratic aspect to this. There are elite chili knowers who are determining what the best chili was.
But for everybody else, I guess they're looking at, this falls on the almost Halloween, so people were kind of dressed up. There was this table of the Super Troopers, and they were dressed up as Super Troopers. There was a limp brisket table, and everybody was dressed up as Fred Durst. And then there was a Spice GPT chili, and I don't know if the ingredients are robotic or whatever, but like everybody had like a weird gimmick like that. They were mostly fine. I mean, some of the chili was not that
Were
good.
there sports?
No.
I think that the stomp aspect of it, the chomp and stomp, is that there's bluegrass music there. apparently.
Is that what? Okay. So when I was there, because I left so I can watch some college football. I don't know how much longer it ran, but I was there for like a couple hours. I don't remember any music.
This says it runs from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's quite a long day of eating chili.
Right, but the chili starts at 12:30, so I get there like at 12, and I leave like at 1:30, and yeah.
So you missed the Penn State-Ohio State game.
I got the second half. I mean, you catch part of the game.
The first half was the fun part.
Well, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that at the time. That sounds like a pretty good time. Was there a beer as well? Or
Yeah,
just,
they had beer and stuff. It was a nice turnout of people.
Were you discerning enough to be like, this is a good chili and this is a not as good chili? Did you have a
After
favorite?
the third chili, it's like, I don't know what I'm eating. I can tell you. Like, I think I would be terrible at discerning, like, quality food.
I think that's true about you.
Chili.
Yes.
It's like, all right, that's,
Oh, food.
Yeah. Basically, it becomes that, I'm still eating food.
That's impressive that for a $10 pre-order for your spoon there, you got
that's good. That's a good
so
lunch.
much chili that you couldn't possibly imagine eating anymore.
I was anticipating some sort of downsides to eating too much chili. Like, I could have eaten more, but, like, I was like, this is a good time to stop.
Yeah.
And I was right.
I'm with you. If it's fucking 12:30 and it's time to start trying chili, it better be tiny little bites of chili. Because if you eat more than, like, we're gonna need a nap. It's the old thing about, like, I don't know how these people day drink for fucking 14 straight hours. Like, what are you doing? If I got drunk at 3 p.m, it's bad to try to extend this for the next 8 hours.
Right.
Like, this is why we hold off.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like fun. We had youth sport. That was the most exciting thing that we did, and
we watched football. It was
watched
very
a bunch of
exciting
football as well. Sure.
Too exciting, one could argue.
All right, let's go through some of the games from the weekend. Where do we want to start? Let's start with Georgia.
Do we want to talk about Jason Kelsey calling that guy gay because he said his brother was gay for dating Taylor Swift?
For dating a woman,
is that
the new gay? That's how you become gay?
Dating Taylor Swift is the new gay.
Wow.
Actually, sorry. Before we get into that, and I mean, I think a strong argument can be made that dating Taylor Swift is pretty gay, but that's beside the point.
Who's the F word now? He said when he threw his phone to the ground.
Is that what he said? I didn't see that part of the clip. Who's the faggot now?
Yes,
That's good stuff.
He said that when he threw his phone to the ground.
Is that
makes any sense.
the new gay? Being if you're a faggot,
having your phone thrown to the ground by Jason Kelsey is the new gay.
By Philadelphia Eagles retired great Jason Kelsey.
It's a great weekend.
Yeah. Abe, first we need to live bet the games, though.
Right.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have traveled to undefeated Kansas City and are engaged in a football battle. Who you got?
Did Tampa fail me before? I feel like they've failed me before. I'm going to go with...
Abe, much like Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints, who has lost to 30 different NFL teams.
That's quite impressive.
I think he has just maybe it's 31. I think he has just the Raiders to go. That if he loses to the Raiders, and he has that opportunity later this year, the Saints do play the Raiders.
I hope he does.
He could become the first player to lose to every single NFL team. You cannot worry about whether or not a team has failed you before, as though somehow it is their fault.
It is their fault.
You chose them.
They're the one performing. I'm giving my confidence to the team, and they let me down. I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
You're going to go with the 7-0 Chiefs against the Baker Mayfield-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Once again, a bold choice.
Going on a limb.
Going way out on a limb. You fucked up last week. I forget what that game was, but you got that wrong, the Thursday night game.
The Texans and the other team, there was the Jets, was it?
Yeah, I think you picked the Texans, and the Jets won that game rather handily. We're at halftime, by the way, just to give you an update. It is 10 for the Chiefs and 7 points for the Buccaneers.
So looking good.
It's a tight game on a Monday night that we're missing. Instead, we're here recording a podcast.
Yeah, but a quick one.
A relatively quick one, certainly, yes. Let's talk about Georgia, Florida. First, Did you watch the entirety of the Georgia-Florida game, Abe?
I did, yeah. Not a very good performance by that bum Carson Beck. But
Carson Beck throws 3 interceptions before figuring something out and closing the game
He
on
figured out how to not throw interceptions.
a run of I think he went 12 of 14 with a couple of scores after that. But yeah, he was dreadful for a large percentage of this game. 2 games in a row now where he has thrown 3 interceptions. He's thrown like a dozen or something on the season now.
A lot.
And it's kind of, I mean, I'm sort of confounded by it because I think that he's actually a very good quarterback.
I thought so too.
Aaron Murray says he's just trying to do too much.
But what went wrong? He's not injured, right? I mean, like in my friend's group
No,
chapter,
he's just trying to do too much.
It's a Lamborghini. Like his head is too big, or like the girlfriend. It's like I think it's got to be something else. There's some other reason why he's pressing like this. Where
He's trying to do too.
Right.
It's head too big, sort of, where it's like, oh, I can make that. It's like, no, you can't.
Right.
You can't, and you didn't. So he just needs to fucking chill.
Do we need to be concerned I mean, obviously you're concerned about the offense because it wasn't there. And when you have Etienne was hurt in this game and didn't produce very much at all. The running game didn't do much. I mean, Frazier looked okay, 19 carries for 82 yards, but only a long of 11. The longest running play of the game was that one of those goofy reverses to Dylan Bell that actually worked out okay for 33 yards. But the ground game couldn't really get cooking, and certainly Carson Beck was largely terrible until he sort of got things moving in the right direction. But should we be concerned at all about the defense, considering that Lagway goes down, who is their freshman who had looked okay?
I mean, he just had that 1 touchdown after the pick, right? Like he didn't do much. I mean, he didn't play much, to be fair to him.
Right, and then they have the kid walk-on who transferred from Yale, last name Warner, who ends up going 7 of 22 for 66 yards with a 3-yard average and 1 interception. But they ran the ball okay against us. Yeah, sure, good for him. Game ends up a 2-touchdown game, 34-20, which is tough sledding for Abe.
I know.
And his picks.
Stupid half point.
It's such a weird season for the Dogs because, as good as they looked in the second half against Alabama, as thoroughly dominant as they looked against Texas, we've seen a number of these games this season where they sort of play to the level of the competition, and things get nasty. This is not a look ahead podcast. We should not be talking about Ole Miss, but holy shit, we play Ole Miss this weekend, and like
a 2.5 point favorite at this point is
2.5 point favorite on the road at Ole Miss. If the front seven does not get to Jackson Dart and disrupt the shit out of that offense, like I don't know that we can survive a shootout against that offense. That is an incredibly high-powered offense when they get moving in the right direction.
Yeah, well, fuck them. We'll talk about that on Thursday.
Should we be concerned about
Probably,
what we're going to see from this team moving forward?
That's why this podcast is fun. We're talking about what happened, not what might happen tomorrow or after. We're just talking about last week, where that was a Georgia team that thought they were just going to run all over a shitty Florida, and a Florida team who is, for some reason, still trying to win football games this year. And good for them, and good for Billy Napier, and that's what that was. Plus Carson Beck thinking he can do stuff when he can't do stuff.
Yeah, they were all bad picks too. Like it's nothing that you can make an excuse for, really. Like they were just bad decisions and poorly thrown balls to the wrong spots. They scored 28 points in the second half, and it felt like as we were really getting rolling, I think I said at one point, like, we're gonna win this stupid game 41-20, and like you're almost gonna forget, and we didn't quite get to that number.
No, and things got bad after you said that.
What I said was,
you should have shut the fuck up.
What I said was we're gonna win this game 41-13. And then they ended up scoring another touchdown in the fourth quarter and making it closer. But like it felt like we were in control, like halfway through the third quarter there.
But it only felt that way because Florida is not nearly as good as Georgia.
Right, and their offense could not make anything happen
Right.
with that quarterback. It wasn't going to happen there. They weren't going to come back. I will say, while it was unpleasant to experience that game, especially in the first half, by the end of the game, it's like, oh, we beat Florida by 2 touchdowns, and I'm supposed to be like mad about
Right.
stuff. Like, wait, no, that's stupid. I
it's
can't
fine.
be anything but totally fine with having beaten Florida by 2 touchdowns. Like, there's any other reaction.
Well, after giving them hope too, it feels good.
Any other reaction to beating Florida by
It's a Nick
2
Saban
touchdowns
style win.
is completely unacceptable from the standpoint. Like, you have to be such a spoiled piece of shit fan to be mad about beating Florida by 2 touchdowns.
The sequence of events is, I mean, yeah, if you just like were out of town and you just woke up the next day and you saw the score, you're like, oh, okay, they won, then that's that. But like, there were some people saying like, had that quarterback not gotten hurt, Florida may have won, which I don't believe. But like, who knows?
They probably wouldn't have.
It might have been a more exciting game. I mean, ultimately, it was a closer and more exciting game than we've gotten out of this game in the last few years
Yeah.
because Georgia has kind of stomped the shit out of the Gators. Anything else worth mentioning out of this game? I don't think so.
No, but we did. I mean, Kirby said 2 years ago in the locker room, physically, I want to break them, and we did that this year. We like destroyed. Everybody got injured.
Is there
Yeah, there were a
that
lot
game.
of injuries on both
The
sides.
whole-
Though,
Was it
that
but a
field?
lot of
Yeah,
Florida
but
guys kept getting
Florida,
hurt.
like entire starting team, is now on the bench because they're hurt.
Yeah. There's the Oregon-Michigan game. Oregon stomps
It's not
Michigan.
really worth talking
Not
about.
really worth talking about, except to say that Oregon is very clearly the number 1 team in the country at this point and has, in fact, received all of
I
the
want to hear about Abe's
votes.
Clemson friends.
they stopped following the Clemson team.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're like, we already won 2 titles a long time ago. I don't care about football.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
That's a new
Well,
posture.
good because Clemson lost to Louisville.
Yeah, that was
Clemson got
By a lot.
fairly well handled by Louisville, and it certainly suggests that what I thought was a Clemson team that had figured something out after Georgia was actually simply
Figured out how to play shitty teams.
the result of their schedule, which is they haven't really played anybody since Georgia, and the first time they play a halfway decent team in the form of this Louisville team, they end up getting their asses kicked.
and throwing trash on the field.
Yeah, what was
Yeah.
up with that?
3rd week in a row now since Texas started the trend, gave the permission structure for the rest of shitty college football fans to litter the field with trash whenever something doesn't go their way. Not a great thing going on, and it's so funny the way that this works from a sort of sociological standpoint, which is you go the whole season or years without fans throwing trash on the field, and then one school does it and it becomes like an acceptable thing to do, and it's like they've been given permission by someone because somebody else did it first.
Monkey see, monkey do, right?
Yeah,
Something like that.
that's a shame for old Yabo Dabo, but it doesn't look like they're going to come out of the ACC at this point. Not mathematically,
Right,
of
yeah,
course, they
but-
still could.
Yeah,
But
not a good
it's
sign.
hard to imagine that if they face any serious competition, that they'll be able to overcome it.
You know the Ohio State Penn State game. Every time, I seem to always kind of memory hold Penn State's poor outing when it comes to like top 5, top 10 matchups. But
Yeah.
there was some graphic that showed that this Franklin guy always chokes. He has not won really any like top 10, top 5 matchups in like forever. Like he's like over, which is remarkable.
Yeah, and you can win a lot of games in that conference over many years, and still lose to Michigan and Ohio State every year.
Right.
And before you could beat up on Michigan because Michigan wasn't any good for a long time. But like you're only running into top 5 teams every now and then, right? And it's usually going to be in the shape of Ohio State. And yeah, he's just constantly gotten his ass kicked in these games.
Still has job security.
Maybe he
Maybe
gets for being cranky all the time.
maybe this is like, you know, he's not like at risk of being fired, right? So it's like maybe they're okay with being like 3rd banana in the Big Ten, or at least the former.
Well,
Big Ten.
especially now,
We'll
he's gonna
see.
make the fucking playoff
Right.
this
Yeah,
season. He's
this
probably
is-
gonna win. He's gonna win a playoff game in all likelihood
Right.
because there'll be a top 8 seed
They'll
who gets to
host a
host a
game.
home
Yeah,
playoff
yeah.
game. Yeah. So like they end up hosting like a Boise State or something and winning that game.
It was such a
It'll
crazy
be a
first half.
successful season.
I watched it on my phone in the car largely, but it was fun.
Penn State had everything go their way in the beginning of that game, including a dreadful pick six thrown by Will Howard of Ohio State. And then later in that game, Will Howard fumbles out of the back of the end zone and turns the ball over to Penn State in that fashion, where that becomes a touchback going in the other direction, which means that Will Howard himself essentially handed 14 points to Penn State.
Was he the one that was like, I wanted to go to Penn State and they didn't want me?
Yeah, he never got a nibble.
And this was his performance. Like I'm going to show them, and he showed that.
Yeah, not great. But for me, this comes down to the fact that I complain certainly about how this Georgia offense sometimes looks fucking constipated and unable to do things that you would expect them to be able to do more things of. There is no more like plodding and constipated offense than a James Franklin offense. It's such an unpleasant brand of football. And like Drew Aller is a pretty good quarterback who I suspect would be awesome anywhere else. Right. But because he's in this fucking awful and plodding and constipated James Franklin offensive scheme, and like they changed the offensive coordinator.
Every
they fired
year
their
they
guy.
change the offensive coordinator,
and it just keeps happening because this is a James Franklin constipation problem.
Right.
And he looks like a guy who'd be he'd regularly have bowel issues in some form or fashion.
Not a lot of fiber in his diet.
Seems miserable.
Yeah, they get down to 1st and goal with a chance to make this thing happen for themselves, and they run the ball up the gut fucking 3 times in a row. And they do the same stupid thing where they bring in extra beef, right? They bring in the big fat guys and they
jumbo package
one of them, and they line one of them up out wide, and then they motion him across the formation as some sort of a deke, or like he's a decoy or something. And still they just hand the ball to the running back, and not to their like fucking potential like all conference tight end or fullback hybrid that they have there, number 44, who seems like a really fun and exciting offensive player. They don't hand it to that guy. They just hand it to the running back 3 times in a row. And like, what the fuck are you doing? And then Ohio State gets the ball on the 1-yard line and just gets a bunch of first downs to seal the deal there. Must be tough to be a Penn State fan. Also, I have some sympathy for them getting this big noon kickoff instead of making this a night game where they can make a big production out of things and have the big whiteout that they do there for the night games. It seems like it's shitty of Fox to put this at noon, and I fully don't understand. I guess they're just trying to make
They want people to watch it at noon.
Kickoff to happen, but like there's a bigger audience for this at 8:00, I would think.
But no, at 8:00 we were watching A&M South Carolina, and so were most people.
Yeah, but this is Ohio State and Penn State. The Southeastern Conference fans generally underrate how big these fucking programs are in the middle of the country. These are enormously popular programs. When you go and you look at the most watched games every single year, they're always involving Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State. A lot of the top 50 ends up shaking out with a lot of SEC teams. But the fan bases for these middle of the country teams are enormous, and a primetime game at Happy Valley would have been much better for them, I think. And it sucks that they couldn't do that.
So do you think it's all just to drive up like people to watch their pregame show to beat game day? Is that all this is for? Like, I mean, what else is there? Like,
I didn't watch their pregame show.
Yeah, we didn't. We put on game day like we always do.
Maybe
that's what you
I
put on.
I put on game day and then didn't look at it.
Sorry, I'm not
Pat
watching
McAfee's
fucking Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush talk about football. I don't fucking care. I will put on game day and watch Pat McAfee play with his nipples next to Nick Saban for 3 hours. Ohio State does not scare me, though. That is the other lesson that I got from this game. Like, I have no particular reason to fear either one of those Big Ten teams. Oregon scares the shit out of me in terms of somebody that we're going to have to play. But I'm not too worried about Will Howard, like, fucking playing hero ball and kicking our ass at some point.
Speaking of Oregon, Lori, wasn't that Josh Page fella? He said, like, if Oregon was in the SEC, they'd be the best team in the SEC. They could beat any team.
I believe you. I listen to him some.
Yeah. Very bullish on that.
I don't know that I believe that.
I don't know. That'll be interesting to see in a playoff because
I think what have we watched? 2 Oregon games this season? Like we haven't watched a ton of Oregon football, largely because they haven't played anybody except Ohio State and Boise.
Yeah, they had a slow start. They had a good game against Ohio State, and then I don't know what else.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting thing to say. I don't know anything about football.
Yeah.
So I can't argue with that.
All right, as we move through the top 10 here, we should talk about Duke-Miami, which was much closer than the 53.
So close for so long.
Yeah.
The 53-31 final score indicates. It helps that Miami scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and also 15 points in the third. So at the half, it was 21-17. Duke with the lead.
That quarterback for Miami, Cam Ward, he puts up a lot of big numbers, but occasionally he'll make just boneheaded decisions, and I don't think that's going to translate well in the NFL. But like he plays great most of the time, but every once in a while it's like, what are you doing? He'll just throw something across his body for no reason. The team is like doing fine. You don't need to take this risk, and he does.
It not only won't translate well at the next level, it's not going to translate well in the playoff.
Yeah.
Like this is not a team that is going to make any noise in terms of a national title. I don't care if they run the table in the ACC and end up as the conference champion, undefeated, and a top 4 seed. I have no faith whatsoever in their defense. This is a bad team defensively that has very nearly lost like 4 games
They've
already.
Lost almost soon, yes.
Still undefeated, top 5 program.
Yeah, sure. But Cam Ward makes way too many, as you're saying, like this is not what you're describing is what makes a bad quarterback actually, right? Which is somebody who is constantly taking risks that don't need to be taken.
Yeah. Carson Beck does that.
And makes Carson doesn't seem to take risks that don't need to be taken. He just has not. He's just not throwing the ball well. Like it's like his head's not in the game. Cam Ward's head is in the game. He just makes fucking terrible decisions all the time, including at the very end of this game when they should just be running the ball every single time. He gets strip sacked at like the fucking 6-yard line because he decided that the RPO that was called should be a pass instead of just fucking putting it in the guy's belly and run clock run and win this fucking game. He wanted to get his sixth passing touchdown of the game. And therefore pulled the ball out and was going to throw it and then get strip sacked down there in the red zone, which is just unforgivable in a game that you're currently winning by fucking 22 points.
Hey, what's the O in RPO, Bob?
Yeah. So no faith in Miami whatsoever. Speaking of the ACC, we can talk about SMU, which beats Pittsburgh.
Eat shit, Pitt.
That was a contest of ACC undefeateds. SMU, of course, had the early loss to currently undefeated BYU early in the season, but since has just scored an absolute metric shit ton of points, and they did so again this weekend, 48-25 over Pitt. SMU is a very fun team, and I think I'm going to go ahead and say it now, is my favorite to win the ACC at this point. Wow. I think that this is a team that could get into a ridiculous shootout with Miami, where both teams score fucking 60-plus points. And maybe Miami has the witch's curse on them this year where they just can't fucking lose. But I'm going to go with SMU.
Wow, that is quite the take.
And then Kentucky, Tennessee.
Yeah.
This is a game where I said that was a ridiculous number. It was like 17.5-point number. Tennessee again kind of looks like garbage, and they still find a way to win a game. And so, like, whatever, credit to them. They win the games that they're in. They won 28-18. It never really felt like Kentucky was going to win this game.
But they were like within 3 in the fourth quarter. I mean, but you're right.
But yes,
but it's still Kentucky.
They were keeping it close. It was hard to, especially with Brick Vandegrift out. I don't know what exactly happened to him. I just know that because we weren't watching this game with the sound on, it was in the quad box there, so we were just sort of keeping an eye on it as we were watching A&M South Carolina. But Vandegrift goes down, and so they have to go to their backup, and it wasn't going to happen for Kentucky offensively. But again, like I said, the Kentucky defense held their own against that sort of disappointing and difficult to get things going offense that Tennessee has. And I'm much more nervous at this point about Ole Miss than I am about Tennessee in a couple of weeks. What else?
A&M.
Texas A&M.
Oh, what a great game! I'm not a big
South
Did you
Carolina.
watch the whole game?
Yeah.
That was so fun. That was a fun start to finish game.
Yeah, that was a great game.
South Carolina gets off to a hot start and is winning 14-3 after the first quarter. But then you get to halftime, and A&M has taken a lead. It is, where is it, tied at half, 20-20?
I don't know.
It was either, I think it was tied at the half, 20-20. But
2020.
it felt like all of the momentum was on A&M's side at the half. Like, it felt like, okay, South Carolina, they did what they could do, and they got out to an early hot start, had an early lead, but A&M is going to have figured this out, and they'll come out and win the game in the second half. The opposite of that happened. South Carolina came out and just dominated this thing for the final 2 quarters, scoring 24 points to end up winning the thing, 44-20.
You gonna stop talking shit about Lenora Sellers now?
I'm not talking shit about Lenora Sellers.
You did.
I don't think that he's that great. Like, he's fine. He's a nice little quarterback there, but I'm not
He's
sure
a nice
that.
little quarterback.
And the real reason that they won that game, like, Sellers was good and was able to get out and get moving and get first downs when he needed them. It's not like he threw the ball particularly well. 13 of 27 for a couple of 100 yards and 2 scores. That running game is what made the difference. Sellers goes 15 carries for 106 yards. But Rocket Raheem Sanders, number 5 for South Carolina, 20 carries for 144 yards and 2 scores, including a long of 52. The reason they won that game is because they won the game in the trenches on the offensive line and the defensive line, but especially on the offensive side of the ball. They just dominated A&M in that goofy environment that they have there in Columbia.
That was the best field storm I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That shot at the end where they kept pulling farther and farther back, and it just kept being more and more people. Top notch.
Yeah. A&M's a fucking fraud. That's my answer here. They had a nice win against LSU. But if you can't go to South Carolina and get a win, you're not a serious fucking program. What are we talking about?
Bob said A&M needs Garrett Nussmeier to show up and start fucking shit up, and it made me laugh.
Right. That was the only way that they were going to win that game, is for Garrett Nussmeier, LSU's quarterback, to suddenly show his face and start throwing the ball to the wrong team, because South Carolina wasn't going to do it for them.
This South Carolina team is pretty interesting. I mean, we'll talk more about this on the Thursday show, but 2 interesting teams going against each other, Vandy and South Carolina. I don't know which will give, but I mean,
I know what the odds makers are saying, and it's more utter disrespect for Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt.
It doesn't make sense.
They're the home underdog again against South Carolina.
That's a perfect. Yeah, I mean, like South Carolina. I mean, Vanderbilt and SMU, just ride them. Those 2 teams always win.
Speaking of Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt goes to the loveliest village on the plains down there in Auburn, Alabama, and defeats the Auburn Tigers in a not terribly close fashion. I mean, I guess the score was kind of close.
And it was.
What do you think it's like to be a full adult man and have your nemesis be like a 20-year-old boy? It's got to be weird.
You're referring to Hugh Freeze, and 17-7 was the final score of that game.
7.5 point underdogs. Vanderbilt was.
Yeah. Diego Pavia has now beaten Hugh Freeze in 3 consecutive seasons as the quarterback for New Mexico against Liberty, as the quarterback for New Mexico against Auburn, and as the quarterback for Vanderbilt against Auburn.
That's remarkable.
He might well be the Catholic
amazing.
God's retribution against Hugh Freeze.
It's something. There's something going on
That's
there.
remarkable.
It's too good.
And he swept the state of Alabama, something we can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah, something Vanderbilt hasn't done since the 1950s,
Wow.
I think. Have they beat both Alabama teams in the same season? Again, utterly disrespected by the national media.
We're also
and by the odds makers.
disrespecting Kurt Signetti again because we haven't talked about Indiana beating whoever they beat, Michigan State.
Yeah, but Michigan State stinks.
Yeah, but they're still like we're acting like they're not this thing, and they're a thing.
All right. As soon as Indiana beats Oregon, then I will put respect on their name. That will be worth talking about at that point. But yeah, good for Vandy. Eat shit, Auburn. I don't know how Auburn I don't know how Hugh Freeze isn't on the fucking hot seat or whatever. Like, what? Why aren't we talking about how that guy's going to lose his job? And I guess it's just because they are already paying their last two coaches and therefore can't afford to fire that guy. But what a fucking bum. Any other college football games worth mentioning from the weekend before we get into our picks recap? Boise State scores a ton of points on Friday night to continue rolling. Oh, that Iowa State-Texas Tech game was a fun one down there at the very end. Texas Tech ends up defeating previously undefeated Iowa State. And then, Indiana 47-10 over Michigan State. Houston defeats Kansas State. And then Army keeps things rolling with a 20-3 victory over Air Force. Oh, and we can get into this with my CIB Pick'em game recap. But I believed that the weirdest number of the week was Minnesota minus 2.5 at Illinois. And Vegas ends up correct because Illinois, as they so often are, Illinois loses at home by 8 points to the visiting Minnesota Golden Gophers. So good for you there, Vegas, I suppose. But I get that one wrong. CIB Pick'em contest recap for the weekend. We've got Abe with the high water mark on the weekend with 25 points, including the South Carolina game and Vandy, both underdogs who end up winning outright. Also had the Vikings minus 5.5 against the Colts. We watched some of that game, certainly not all of it.
You didn't
what
miss
happened
much.
last night?
Just
Abe?
a fucking monstrosity. Joe Flacco sucks. I mean, everybody knows this. He's on his last year or two of football. But like the offense is just not very good. This team is not going anywhere. And that's why I was confident that the Vikings would win.
You also had Penn State and Georgia minus the 14.5. So those are no good for you. Lori and I both have Ohio State turn green. The Illinois game goes wrong. Lori was on the right side of the Louisville-Clemson game, and I was not. We both had Vandy. I get the outright upset. Lori just gets the points. And then we were both wrong about Arizona. Arizona got absolutely destroyed. I think the number's 56-7 or something goofy like that by UCF. UCF is a weird-ass team. I don't know what Gus Malzahn is doing down there, but like some weeks, Gus Malzahn brings a football team to the football game, and they kick the other team's ass. And then other weeks, it's like, oh, Gus forgot to bring the fucking football team this week, and the reverse happens, and they just get absolutely destroyed. Must be a frustrating thing to watch as a fan down there. Cousin Steve has a rough week, although things are looking up for him at the moment as he's got one more game to go. He's got the Bucks plus 8.5, updating the Abe's live bet. Currently 17-10 in favor of the Bucks.
What?
Abe, so not looking great for you at the moment.
Is this?
But Steve whiffed on the Packers and the Texans and also Pitt, who, as we said earlier...
Eat shit Pitt.
Why
is he always betting Pennsylvania teams?
Because he's a fucking Pennsylvania guy. I mean, he lives on Long Island, but he's ultimately a Pennsylvania guy. He did apparently have some inside information, though, because Georgia Southern wins outright, although he had them with the points.
Should put an asterisk
also,
next to that.
Jimmy Carter's presidential lock of the week was Kentucky plus 17.5, so he gets that correct as well.
Good job, Jimmy.
Did want to mention, I had a parlay going last night.
It was a thriller.
It was super exciting. It was an 8-team NFL against the spread parlay that I put together before we left for youth sport. And by the time I got home and pulled up the gambling app for the first time of the day, because I made my bets and then
You were busy.
was busy all day, so I wasn't checking the scores
Set it
or
and
anything.
forget it.
Yeah, set it and forget it.
Bet
Exactly.
it and forget it, yeah.
It's just a $10 bet with a potential payoff of $1,748. So slightly outlandish thing to even imagine that it could happen. But when I pull up the gambling app for the first time, I go to the My Bets tab, and what flashes before my eyes is this parlay that I had made, and it's like cash out for $325 or something. It's like, what do you mean cash out for $325?
Shoddy instinct to not just yes.
I'm like, well, first of all, no, I'm not going. What are you talking? Why would I cash out?
At this point, how many of your legs hit?
So at that point, it was, I had the Ravens.
Answer to why would I cash out, you're about to answer.
I am about to answer it. I had the Ravens -9.5, the Commanders -3.5, the Bengals -7.5, the Chargers -1.5. All of those games had hit. Those were my early games in the 1 o'clock window. My late games, I had the Cardinals -1.5. That game was out of reach. That was like a 20-point game, so that was feeling good. I had the Lions -2.5. Which was feeling good because they were kicking the Packers' asses, right? They were up big. Yeah. They ended up winning that game 24-14, comfortably so. I had two more games, right? The only two games that were in question were the Seattle Seahawks +1.5 and the Vikings -5.5, which was the late game, right? So those were the two games that I had to worry about. The Seahawks were playing the Rams. And the Vikings -5.5 against the Colts. And things were looking pretty good because the Seahawks were leading in that game before Geno Smith, my boy, pick six down in the red zone, which was not good. It's returned like 96 yards or something, and not great. And then, by the way, the Seahawks block a punt and get the ball in the red zone after that. And then I think he threw another fucking pick. He did while you were in the shower. So I get in the shower thinking, okay, we're all good because they got the ball in the red zone. It's going to be just fine. They blocked the punt. It's going to be good. We're going to tie this thing. We're going to figure it out. But then Geno Smith gets the ball. They're down a score. It's 20-13. He marches them down the field. It's under 2 minutes. Geno runs the 2-minute drill to fucking perfection. And I'm like, here's what I need, Geno, because it's +1.5 points. Here's what I need, Seahawks. I know you're at home. I know this is a little bit weird. But what I really need is for you to get 6 points here and then go for 2. Because if you go for 2, you win this game. If you succeed, you win the game. Fucking great success for me. Game ends 21-20. Seahawks cover. If you go for 2 and miss, you lose this game 20-19. Great success for me, right? So I'm desperately cheering for the Seahawks to march down the field and then go for 2, which would, it's probably not.
I mean, it makes no sense in the real world. It makes sense in the parlay world, but
that's right. What the fuck are you doing? Why would you kick this field goal and play for overtime, you idiots? What are you thinking here? But that's what they do. And I'm fucking thrilled that they got in there, right? But then as they go to commercial for overtime, it's like, well, wait a second. I need to bet a large amount of money on the Rams here, right? Like, if I'm going to hedge this thing properly, I need to put a significant chunk of cash on the Rams to win this game because I have a potential $1,800 coming my way if the Seahawks manage to win, and then I can either just assume I would have probably had to talk to you at that point because it's the Vikings and the Colts. It's like, Abe, what are we doing here, brother? Because it's Vikings -5.5, and
I wouldn't ever ask Abe.
Right. No, I'm going to go the opposite. Whatever Abe tells me to do.
Call cousin Steve.
Were they still dangling any money in front of you at this point? Or was that 300?
No.
That ship had sailed. Okay. You got it. Press the yes, cash out, yes.
So they wanted me to cash out $324, and that came and went a couple of times, and then it was by the time we got to Seahawks are driving and might tie this thing, they were not offering me any sort of cash out. They were like, I don't know, you fucking made your bed, you bum, you're gonna fucking live with it. But then they score that touchdown, and we're headed to overtime, and it's 20-20. It's like, well, I would be a moron not to put a small pile of money on the Rams here to at least assure myself some amount of profit, right? So I go ahead and I put $150 on the Rams to win that game, which at that point is a payout of $324, which, by the way, is the same number that they were trying to get me to cash out for earlier in the evening. So I was like, this is the number. $150 put it on the Rams, see what happens. And then, like, I'm still cheering for the Seahawks, right? Because I don't want to win that $324. I want to win the $1,800.
Naturally.
That is going to be my fucking birthright if we can get to this this late game with the Colts and the Sam Darnold Vikings. And the Seahawks win the toss, right? They win the toss, and they're marching down the field, and everything's looking great. And then there's a fucking turnover, and that was the end of things. The Rams win. I win $324. I end up positive for the weekend and for the last couple of weeks. I'm back to close to where I started this NFL season at, which is nice. It's a classic subsistence bet win for me. Like it almost sums up my entire gambling experience, which is like I do just enough to maintain the balance in the account, even as
That's good.
Dangling right in front of me is the possibility of a rather dramatic victory. It's like, well, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
And it didn't.
Let's find a way to make sure that we at least make a little bit of money here. And yeah, it certainly didn't. I don't know what I would have done if the Seahawks had held on and won that game for me. And I'm going into the last game on my parlay.
Yeah, that's tough.
Vikings minus 5.5. Do I let it ride?
Of course.
Or
You
do
have
I?
to
No,
like
you
your
have to-
chances. I mean,
No, you have to do the bet against it.
But yeah, I think I would have put at least $200 on the Colts to cover the 5.5, and then it's like, okay, am I hedging? Am I potentially giving up? I'm turning an $1,800 win into a $1,600 win by betting on the Colts to cover here. Yes, but I think that's probably what I would have done is put $200 on the Colts to cover and gone to bed happy and not worrying about it. And find out how it shook out in the morning. What would you have done in that situation, Abe?
I would be surprised that I was doing so well because usually when I play these parlays, the first opportunity would always go south.
Yeah,
Very
it's just
sleepy,
it's
should go to bed.
a bummer because that's the closest I'll come to hitting an 8-way parlay this year in all likelihood, right?
Oh,
you're not
who
gonna
knows?
you're not gonna get back to 8 games against the spread, and you hit 7 out of 8 of
What
them.
was the biggest parlay you hit? Like 5, 6?
I've had the 6.
Okay.
I've had 6 against
Nice.
the spread once before, I think. But 8 is really pushing it. You've been listening to Cast Iron Balls, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Substack, brainiron.substack.com for more from us. Tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com for more from Mark Gillick, who composed our opening and closing themes. Abe, any other sports content that you consumed over the course of the last week that you'd like to talk about now?
Nothing big, but going back to the Derek Carr for just a moment. The Saints, they started this year 2-0, and they've lost every game since, and they fired their head coach, Dennis Allen. So he's been fired twice now. This year and back in 2014, both times, quarterback Derek Carr, he's caused his undoing twice. This Derek Carr guy is no good.
At least he's not like a 20-year-old that keeps beating him.
Derek Carr, this is from NBC Sports. Derek Carr is the NFL's first quarterback to lose to 31 teams, and he has an opportunity
That's really amazing.
to make it all 32 this year.
There was some stat where both him and his older brother David Carr, when he played for the upstart Texans, like they have like some bad records, like of losing, both of them.
Carr was one of 10 quarterbacks in NFL history who had lost to 30 different teams, and the Panthers were one of the 2 teams he still hadn't lost to. Now he's the first quarterback to get to 31. The only team that Carr hasn't lost to is the Raiders, which is also the only team he has never played against because he played for them for most of his career. The Saints play the Raiders in Week 17, which means Carr will have a chance to make it a perfect 32 different teams that have beaten
At this point, wouldn't you want to lose to the? I mean, I know he would.
Yes.
Because now it should be like a trivia answer. Like, who's that quarterback that's lost to every NFL team? It's like, oh, it's Derek Carr.
His overall record is 74-91 in the regular season and 0-1 in the postseason. It's sort of impressive that
That he's still employed.
with just 91 losses, he spread
Yeah.
that out to so many different teams.
Some quarterbacks like, oh, I can't get over the top with the Steelers. They have my number. But him, everybody has his number. Everybody.
Pop quiz, hotshot. This is from the very end of this article about Derek Carr and all of his many losses. Although no NFL quarterback has ever lost to all 32 franchises yet, 4 quarterbacks in NFL history have beaten all 32 teams. Ooh. Name the 4 quarterbacks.
Drew Brees, Tom Brady.
Correct.
Damn. Who are the other 2?
You will, out of principle. Here's a hint. You will, out of principle, never get to the third name on the list.
Eli Manning, Arch Manning. I am out of guesses. I don't know what other Manning is.
You're on the right track.
No, I think I've exhausted all of the Mannings, and I don't know who else.
Peyton Manning is number 3. Who else?
Russell Wilson.
No, go back a little bit further in our lives as football fans. Who's the sort of quarterback who was around long enough and played enough football to have beaten every single other team in football?
I was going to guess Big Ben.
Well, Big Ben would have never played against the Steelers, though.
Yeah,
that is true. So it has to be something. Okay.
Favre.
Lori got it. It's Brett Favre.
Wow. Look at that.
Brady, Manning, Favre, and Drew Brees, the 4 quarterbacks in NFL history to beat every single other team.
1 of 4 to do something good instead of being 1 of 1 to do something bad. Derek Carr.
When did Drew Brees beat the Saints? With whom? Wasn't
he a Charger back in the olden days?
As a Charger, I guess, yeah. 9 quarterbacks who've lost to 30 different teams are Drew Bledsoe, Brett Favre, Joe Kitna, Drew Brees, Carson Palmer, Matt Hasselbeck, Alex Smith, Joe Flacco, and Matt Ryan. Some good quarterbacks on that list. Maybe we shouldn't give Derek Carr too much shit for having lost to all of those teams.
I'm not giving him shit. I'm impressed.
I mean, I'm giving him shit. That fucking sucks.
I'll still give him shit.
Lori, anything on your sports radar worth talking about?
No, I'm tired.
Lori's tired.
But it's only 10:30. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, we got it all done. 17-17 now is the score. Chiefs Bucks with the 4th quarter to go.
They'll pull away now.
Kamala HQ wants to know if they can have money. I think it's too late for money, yeah. Kamala. I think.
Well, it's like the Red Cross when they get the money for next time.
Any thoughts on the college football playoff ranking that we're going to see unveiled tomorrow night?
Are we expecting any surprises? Or is it going to be just like,
you can't expect surprises.
Yeah, that is true. But I mean, like,
it's gonna happen. Oh. It's gonna be so great. They've already decided. They know. It's already known.
Where do y'all think Georgia's going to be? 3 or 4?
It doesn't matter.
Georgia's going to be 2.
They're going to bump.
What are you talking about?
They played uneven against Florida. They're going to knock them down one. Watch.
Who's going to be 2 if not Georgia?
They'll plug in some other team. Maybe the U or something. Look at their 50-plus point performance. They got.
I don't see how you can put Ohio State above Georgia right now.
You said Miami
because they didn't look great. They didn't look great against Penn State. I don't see how you can put Miami above Georgia given.
So, according to the AP, the point system, Georgia's 2, Ohio State is 3, but the points, they're only 7 points apart, 14-49 versus 14-42. So, I can see them leapfrogging Georgia, Ohio State.
It just.
But it won't, to Lori's point, it doesn't matter.
So great.
Right.
We're just going to find out. And then people will have things to say about it, and it won't matter. And they're going to still have things to say, and it's just so cute.
I think that I had a prediction at the start of the season that Georgia was going to beat Alabama 3 times, that they would beat them in the regular season, and then they would beat them in the SEC championship, and then they would beat them in the semifinal of the college football playoff. It's now setting up for Georgia and Texas to have that sort of an opportunity because I don't think that A&M is going to beat Texas. I think that the most likely outcome from here on out is that Georgia and Texas end up meeting in the SEC championship game and both end up making the playoffs.
Mississippi's got to beat Tennessee, got to beat UMass, got to beat Georgia Tech.
I think that it's entirely plausible that in this fucking first year of the 12-team playoff that Georgia could play Texas 3 times in one season, which would be fucking ridiculous. But what are you going to do?
I'm going to watch all the football, and then I'm going to look at Twitter and look at the people having things to say about rankings. It's so funny.
Yeah.
How could they possibly put this team over that team? It's like, oh, yeah, tell them. You get mad at that sports writer. You tell him he doesn't know anything.
What's your go-to network tomorrow night, Abe? Who are you watching?
Usually
ESPN.
Besides, not for the sports, for the election returns.
Anytime big stuff happens, I usually gravitate towards CNN.
Yeah. I prefer Kornacki's big board action to John King's big board action, although I think they're both perfectly adequate at that job. Although I cannot handle, like, the NBC crowd starts to get hysterical when things start going wrong. So, like, got to stay away from MSNBC, certainly. Stay away from Fox for the most part. But yeah, I'll be tuned in to. I'll be hopping around between PBS and CNN and NBC. Probably in all likelihood.
Will the New York Times have their little gauge thing? I always like that.
The needle? Yeah. I don't know if they're bringing back the needle or not.
Back when they're certain.
They took all of the life out of the needle for the 2020 election, whereas in 2016 it would go on these wild swings, and in 2020 it was like, we don't know. It's just moving back and forth just a tiny little bit.
They may do that this time because, again, like, just the composition of the votes. Like, it's hard to figure out, like, the behavior this year. So they're going to go slow.
It's so dumb. Just, like, watch the football game.
The real
and then
question
it ends,
is,
and you see.
Will I or will I not bring the second television upstairs for election returns watching? And, like,
I'm not bringing it up.
Will YouTube TV give me an option for a quad box? Like, I know that they do it for the sports events. Can they quad box me election returns?
They should have, like, Scott Hansen, like, handling things. Oh, somebody's crying on Fox News or
Red
some
Zone?
MSNBC person is freaking out.
Can we get election red zone? It's like they keep going to fucking... And that will only incentivize Wolf Blitzer to have more breaking election alerts or whatever the fucking bullshit they do.
What a key race alert.
5 minutes.
There are so many different categories of alert. Like, stick around for...
It's so awful. Ugh.
You cannot possibly tease a key race alert on the other side of this commercial, right? It clearly is not actually a breaking key race alert if you're going to make me watch 4.5 minutes of commercials before you tell it to me.
Is Wolf Blitzer around for the 28th cycle or just his last...
I don't know. How old is old Wolf Blitzer?
I don't know.
Over under like 73?
Ooh,
I'm going to set the over under at 73.
That's exactly right. Wolf Blitzer. Let's see. 76. Wow. So he'll be 80 the next time this happens.
Yeah, but they still have Lee Corso doing
That's
stuff.
true. But, you know, they have him very... You got to watch whenever they take him. He'll come in, do the very first segment, and then they'll tell him to fuck off for a little bit, and then he'll come back, do some dress up.
I think Kirby's got his hand up Lee Corso's ass and is working him like a meat puppet. I think that's what's going on with that dude at this point. He leans in and puts his arm on him as though he is a ventriloquist dummy. Like every time Lee Corso is talking.
Kirby?
Herb Street. Kirby Derp Street. That guy.
Okay.
You know, the blonde former Ohio State quarterback who calls games for ESPN. He leans over, and he's always got his arm on him, and he's always listening in very intently, and it's almost like you can see his lips moving just a little bit when Lee Corso is talking. I'm pretty sure he's just ventriloquizing Lee Corso at this point.
I'm surprised that they don't just... I'm sure they'll get there eventually just to bring him out for that final segment, because like they still try to work him in, I think, like 3 segments or however many they do during their 3 hours.
It's deeply uncomfortable every time.
It is.
The
Indiana one should have been it. That should, because he went there or coached there or something. That should have been the end.
But it's one of those things. Like, if you tell Lee Corso to stay away from game day, is he just dead the next day? Is he just fucking done?
Yes, but that's good. It's good to.
And apparently, like Kirk is the one that he's pulling rank to say like he stays as long as he wants, or I'm walking.
Yeah. I'm sure Kirk would leave on principle if they said that it's too much for old Lee. Anyway, Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
What a nightmare. What a nightmare.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun, I'm telling you.
It won't be fun.
I'm trying to decide if I'm going first thing in the morning or if I'm going to wait until midday to go vote.
Why wouldn't you wait till midday?
I don't know, just to get it over with.
Have you ever experienced any waiting on Election Day over there?
I have when I go in the morning.
The longest I've ever waited up here is like 20 minutes or something in line. Nothing serious.
Usually on election days, there's like no one ever there. Maybe with a DJ tomorrow I'll be busier. I'll report back, but it's never been busy. The only time I've ever waited in line was one time for like in the primaries. I did something. I went somewhere and it was like 10 minutes. But usually like general election day stuff, no problem.
No, the longest I've ever waited was when we voted early before we went to Disney. And we waited in line for like an hour, I think, to vote early.
I didn't wait in line for an hour, I don't think. Did I?
I did. Maybe, was I alone when I voted?
We voted separately. I know that. I voted after work one day, early. But I don't know how long it was.
I think I saw somewhere online, they're like, Virginia was called like 30 minutes in. And they were trying to gauge like what this means, like if they'll call it 30 minutes in this time or it'll take longer, because they didn't call it immediately when Hillary ran it. So they're always like trying to figure out if they can figure out these other states.
Northern Virginia just got so blue, and there's so many people there.
Yeah, more so than
I think it's going to be closer in Virginia than we want it. It'll be more like 2016 than it was in 2020 here, if I had to guess.
Yeah, there was one where it was 2020 where it was Mark Warner's senator race, and it was like 5% of the vote is in. We're calling it.
Yeah, we've seen enough.
It's just how, and it's because it was all Northern Virginia.
Yeah. I'm going to miss one aspect of this election season, which is hearing that hung cow approves this message, or that hung cow is going to go to Washington and fuck shit up. Yeah, I bet you are, hung cow. I would expect nothing less of you, hung cow.
We gotta go to bed. It's gonna be a long fucking week.
Yeah. Over under me going to bed 2:30 a.m. tomorrow night.
Over.
Over? You think I'm up later than 2:30 in the morning?
Yeah.
Oh my God. If you get sick again, I'm going to be so pissed.
I'm not going to be up at 2:30, but yeah, you'll be up.
Abe just said, "You're one sick fuck, Bob."
Bed.
Yeah. All right. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.